Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining the webinar today. I'm going to get started into it right away. Just a couple of quick announcements. First of all, again, thank you very much for joining us. Seminars at Sea was created about 14 years ago, I think, by A.J. Collier, who is the president of the PMI Clearlake Galveston PMI chapter. And it became kind of an interesting thing and a lot of fun. And it's been going on for several years. So I just want you to be aware of what this is all about. Seminars at Sea is a combination of a vacation and an educational event. It's sort of like what we call an edu-vacation. Some people have probably heard the term infotainment or edutainment. And what we do is we combine 2 days worth of actual workshop seminars with a cruise that has one full day in Cozumel, Mexico. And during that particular cruise, there's an opportunity to network with people. We have informal sessions in the evening, formal sessions on Friday and Sunday, and also a closing reception that's always a lot of fun. So we want to emphasize that, yes, it is a cruise, but it is a cruise that focuses on the PMI talent triangle. And I think many people know about that. And our session today is actually more of a technical session for PDUs. And your PDU, one PDU will be posted at the end of the session. One PDU and all the information about the PDU will be posted there. Okay, the PMI triangle, of course, is technical, leadership, and strategic and business management. And what we try to do here, as it says in the slide, we're cruising the PMI triangle to promote business value. Okay, it is a very unique educational experience, and we want to emphasize that it's not all just fun and games. There is time for that, a lot of enjoyable things to do, plus some great speakers. Okay, we have a good lineup of speakers. Some of our speakers will be here today. Dr. Desiree C. LeBlanc and Kathy Ridley and Kevin Martin will be speaking to you at this webinar. And we also have Kim Bushin, myself, Frank Salatis, Dr. Dennis Sherman, and Tina Bayers. And these are our speakers that will be actually presenting during the webinar. And that's about it, really, in terms of what's going on with the with the webinar. If you're interested in the webinar, contact Sherry at houstontravelzone.com. There are still openings available for people who might be interested in taking an educational cruise. Okay, and with that, I'm going to get started right away. Before I do that, we're just going to ask a quick question. I think many of you that are on the call here are either an Agilist or you're somehow interested in Agile. Maybe you're working in an Agile organization. And one of the things that we're interested in is the, and I don't know how to put this exactly right, the differences, in some cases, the conflicts that seem to be going on between what is known as Agile and what is known as traditional or conventional project management. So what I'd like you to do as our speakers are speaking is to post your comments about, how do we fix that? How do we get the traditional project managers and the Agile type project managers actually collaborating more effectively together and working out ways to show that these methodologies can work together and that there is benefit in looking at both of these approaches and then selecting the one that's best for your organization. So if you have any suggestions or experience about how we can close the gap that seems to exist between traditional project management and Agile, that would be a big help. And with that, and by the way, I'm encouraging you to ask questions of the speakers as we go forward. And at various times during each presentation, I will attempt to address those questions with the speakers. Okay, so we'll try to make this as interactive as possible. So with that, I'm going to begin the presentations by presenting to you Kathy Ridley and Desiree LeBlanc, who will give a brief introduction about themselves, and then they will present their particular program. So Desiree and Kathy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Frank. Welcome, everyone. My name is Desiree LeBlanc. I have over 30 years of experience in IT project management, primarily in the oil and gas industry. Kathy Ridley is a certified Agile project manager with extensive experience in leading large-scale IT projects, and she has been the past president of PMI Houston chapter. Next slide, please. Our presentation today is a glimpse of our seminar presentation titled Agile Lesson Learned, Mythbusters in Everyday Life. At the seminar, I will present what research has collected and determined are the top 10 lessons learned in managing Agile projects. Here are just a few topics we will explore. Organizational readiness. Based on research findings, you will be able to determine if your organization is ready for Agile by answering a few questions. One, while many organizations and departments find Agile appealing, how well has your organization fully engaged in Agile approaches? Do they accept the concept but not the actual delivery? Do they fully support project managers by appropriately resourcing the project with the right IT and business staff? Are your project managers fully engaged with Agile, focusing on functionality, delivery, and task completions? Are your staff trained in Agile methodologies? These are just a few of the questions that we will talk about the organization readiness. The second topic, power struggle between Agile and waterfall approaches. There's a picture below on the slide, a representation of your company. Many organizations are very comfortable with their traditional waterfall approach since processes, they're repeatable, people speak the same language, uniform structure, reliability in planning and estimating, requirements are clearly understood up front. Schedule, cost, delivery are confirmed at the onset of the project, and formal documentation is required throughout the project. In Agile, you have a continuous learning experience. You're testing throughout the project, you're testing the usefulness and the value of the product, you're collecting ongoing feedback from your users. There's ever-changing requirements, whether it's new functionality or a backlog. Are your project managers creating a hybrid solutions to meet the best of both worlds? What is the expectation from the best of both worlds? Are some projects more fit for purpose doing Agile versus waterfall approach? Can you discover the happy medium for your organization by applying Agile principles in a waterfall mindset? How do you get your organization and your team to change the mindset from traditional to Agile? Or are you happy with that happy medium? The next one is Agile project failures versus traditional project failures. Are Agile projects more successful than traditional projects? Will applying Agile methods guarantee project success for your projects? Many of you may be familiar with the annual chaos reports published by the Standish Group. Since 1994, the Standish Group has been reporting the percentages on project failures and successes on an annual basis. In 2015, they studied 50,000 projects around the world in software development industry. The sample size of the Agile and traditional projects comparison were based on 10,000 software projects. They found that across all projects, Agile was 39%, had a higher success rate than Waterfall, or Waterfall projects reported at 11% successful rate. 60% of the Waterfall projects were challenged versus 52% Agile projects were a challenge. 9% of Agile projects failed versus 29% of the Waterfall projects have failed. As you can see, if one were to move toward an Agile project methodology, you will find that Yes, there's a higher percentage of successful, but the key is, are you ready to implement an agile project? Is your company ready to implement an agile project? Next slide. Okay. We will issue a brief survey at the beginning of the seminar to capture lessons learned in managing agile projects. Once all the surveys have been collected, I will compute the results and compare the results with the information collected from various research studies. The results will be presented during the seminar as we discuss each lessons learned, so join us as we journey together and learning more on how we can apply lessons learned prior to kicking off our next agile project. I will now turn the presentation over to Kathy.
Okay, Kathy, before you begin, Desiree provided some pretty interesting statistics, and I just wanted to check on something. I heard that 29% of waterfall projects failed, according to the Chaos report. And what was the failure rate for agile projects?
9%.
9%. Okay. Is there anything that you can offer as to why there is such a difference between these two failure rates, 29% waterfall and 9% agile?
I think one of the reasons is because you have that ongoing feedback throughout the project and you have the ongoing testing throughout the project versus in waterfall, you're waiting to the end, and that waiting to the end may cause you to go back and rework a lot of things you worked during the development phase of it. And speaking of IT software projects, where it could be deemed as a failure.
Okay, one other thing is I know that the Chaos report is not readily available. You just can't go and download it from the internet. But is there any way that people can get at least summary information about the Chaos report? And the the information that you provided seems to be very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to know more about it. Is there a way to get any of that information?
Yes, there is a link I found on the projectmanagement.com, and I can provide that link. And it has it broken down by large scale projects, medium sized projects, and small sized projects.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I think that that'll probably generate a few more questions a little bit later on. There were a couple of comments that I want to see if I can get up here in just a minute. But anyway, let me introduce Kathy. Kathy, if you would continue on with the presentation. Oh, here we go. Kimberly Johnson said, "There is not a silver bullet. You tailor the approach to the culture of the organization and the type of project." And James Hayner, that's Haner, said, "We may need to let go of the PMBOK guide and embrace the Agile guide." Well, James, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are going to push back on that one. But let's hear from Kathy, and then we'll address some of those questions in a little bit more detail. So, Kathy, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you go to the next slide for me? I'm going to add on to some of Desiree's comments around 9% successful Agile projects. I think in Agile projects, you're redefining what success is. Success is no longer based upon the time that it takes or the budget that it takes. It's based upon the delivery and the satisfaction of the customer. But if you've been in the business for as long as I have, you will know that you are in an Agile project. You are constantly asked, how long will it take? And that's one of the things that we often say, well, it's Agile. We don't know how long it will take. In my experience, if you can, as a consultant, if you can't answer that question, you won't be the project manager for very long. So I don't know if that's your experience, if you've ever heard this, that we don't know how long it's going to take. It's Agile. In my session, I'm going to talk about some techniques about planning and defining how long an Agile project could take. The problem with any project is it's difficult. Traditional waterfall projects do have bumps in the road. We plan the best we can looking down the road, but we still run into problems. With Agile, it's not a straight road. It's a long, winding road that you plan in 2-week increments. And in between those, there's blind spots. And so dealing with those blind spots and resetting expectations is something that I want to explain how I do it. Okay, I'm in a hybrid environment, past growing up from traditional waterfall expectations into agile expectations. In agile, we need to do something called adaptive planning. And it is really, truly estimating the unpredictable. So how do you do that? First, you have to make a plan, and then in that plan to replan. Adaptive planning is an agile planning concept for development. Remember that everything is time boxed. It's a fixed duration, a set amount of work to be done in whatever your sprint is. 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We typically do 2 weeks. The plan to replan and expect an emergent plan versus a predictable plan in traditional waterfall. Estimates are created by progressively defining the stories, sizing them, estimating them, and planning them into a release. That release will have features. Those features will be deliverables as we traditionally know them. And then you're going to break up those features into stories. And those stories are where you're going to get your effort estimate. Your effort estimate is not the number of hours. So how can you tell somebody how much it's going to cost or how long it's going to take when I use Scrum when I'm never talking hours at this level? Well, effort is defined by a couple of different ways. The first one that we use is t-shirt sizing. And that's the idea that you're either going to be implementing a small, medium, or extra large story. I call them product backlog because that's just the tool that I'm using. So if I use the term PBI, I'm really referring to a deliverable that can be done within the sprint of PBI. Now, if your team estimates and says, this is extra small, well, it's really too small then. Let's just get it. Let's just realize it's really small, too small to plan. But if it's extra large, then it's too big. Then your story needs to be split. Another method that is very popular, and that's the Fibonacci method. And that's the idea that everything is growing by twice as much. So you have a story that's 1 point, it's small, a 3, then a 5, then an 8, and a 13, and it's using the Fibonacci sequence and growing to that. My best practice is that I don't go above, the 13. We get to the 21, and I feel that we need to kind of split the story up. Okay. There's also a really fun technique called planning poker. And this, you can get this deck of cards, and this uses what we traditionally known as the wideband Delphi technique, which is basically getting consensus by the team on how much effort this story is. Not how much hours, but how much effort. There's also something called affinity diagram, which puts your estimates in buckets, which is grouping them and grouping them together through, large bucket, medium bucket, and estimating. You can also use the 3-point estimate called PERT, which is getting the optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely. Some of these techniques you've probably heard as being a traditional PMP. These are techniques you can bring into your Agile project. So you calculate the time that it's going to take based upon the team velocity. So velocity is the total amount of effort that can be done within your sprint. Okay. So if your team can typically take on an effort of 30, then when they do the stories, you will know how much work you can get planned in that sprint. Summing that up to go and do the same thing with estimating your features, and the breakdown of your features will give you an idea of the team's velocity added up to how long it's going to take to deliver a feature and to deliver a release. So that's one way that we work to understand a schedule. The second myth is that your team must be dedicated or co-located. In today's environment, this is really not very realistic to have all the team members together. So what do? So I'll discuss agile portfolio practices, and this is really truly a balancing act because team members are always overbooked. So we actually balance our portfolio every 2 weeks along with our sprint. And this work is balanced based on priority that is set by the VP steering committee. Every project has a number, and the higher the project number up into the value chain, the resources plan for that work you'll get the resources for your project. If you ask for resources and it falls below the capacity level, then I'm sorry, your work's going to have to go off to next sprint. And that could happen again is next sprint based on priority. The project manager may not get the resources. So it's good to be working on the higher priority projects, obviously. But then also, what about support work? So first thing we do when we're doing our sprint planning is we plan the team's capacity, and that's typically less than a day because people need to go to meetings, they need to have their hall conversations, so their capacity is not necessarily 8 hours. It might be set for 6.5 or 7. And then the project managers assign the work as they plan. And in the PMI session on the C, I will go over a typical 1-month calendar of all of the things you need to do to plan in this way. And then the team members, they might have support tasks. They might have got tickets from ServiceNow, and that's work that they need to block out. So the team members will block out their support tasks. And then we'll all come together in a couple of meetings during our sprint planning, and we'll discuss the resources and the time, and then we'll balance them, and we'll make sure that the work that we're planning can be achieved based upon the hours that have been allotted for that particular sprint. So we balance our sprint activities through this agile portfolio practice. I will talk more about that and provide you a calendar, as I said.
Kathy, this is Frank. A couple of questions. One is you mentioned something growing by twice as much, and it was something called the
Fibonacci.
Okay, if you could put a chat as to how to spell that so people can look into what that is. And secondly, a couple of people are asking about the slide. Should we be moving to a different slide, or are you still speaking from the Mythbusters?
I am. This is content that I'm going to go into greater detail. But for the moment, if you don't mind, I'll switch to some metrics that I'll cover to talk about how do you know if it's working, Scrum is working for you.
Well, let me ask you one other question here. You were talking about estimates, how long will it take, which to me is a challenge both in the agile environment and in the traditional project environment where unfortunately we have people telling you how long it's going to take as opposed to allowing people to estimate how long it's going to take. How in the agile environment do you manage that to make sure that the estimates that are being provided are more reliable? Now, and notice I didn't say accurate. I think it's pretty difficult to have an accurate estimate. But what is done in the agile environment that is different in traditional that will allow people to do a better job in estimating how long something might take?
Well, I think you asked like 2 questions. The first one is, what do you do when you're being given a time frame and the expectations are we need this to be done? You didn't really get the opportunity to estimate it and say this is how long it's going to take. The technique that you want to use there is called minimal viable product, where when you do your story breakup and your sequencing, when you work with creating your story map, you decide what is the minimum viable product. So a lot of the things that the business person will do, you build the most critical items first, and then you will deliver that. And that's typically what you want to do when you're given a time estimate to get to an MVP. And then as time goes on, you can add some of the exceptions and some of the special enhancements and start growing those into your product. Another thing as far as managing the correct time estimate, because you have these blind spots, meaning you have a blind spot because you didn't plan everything up front. You didn't spend, your time writing detailed business requirements. But by the way, I do write business requirements. I try to spend at least a sprint defining the business requirements and going over the stories with the business and doing wireframes so that they know what to expect. But even so, the unexpected happens, and that unexpected changes your time frame. When that happens, what I have is I have a steering body set up, and that I bring the unknown that we just discovered to them. And I ask them about what will we do with this? Is this something more important than the plan that I presented to you originally? And if it is more important, then I need to move the schedule. And so I let the steering body make that decision versus panicking and saying, oh my gosh, this is an unknown and I have to do it and I have to do it right now and it's going to push off my schedule and then I'm going to be embarrassed. The fact is that with this type of projects and these types of discovery that always happen every 2 weeks, it's going to happen. And so having a steering body to help you reset your schedule so that you can put out new milestones and when these things happen. I hope that answers.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So based upon the time that, how much more time do I have to talk about metrics, Frank, before we turn it over to
a couple more minutes before we go over to Kevin.
Okay, so here's what I want to tell you right now about metrics. There's some on the screen, but the most important thing that you can do is get your Scrum or your Agile cadence in place. And by cadence, I mean getting the things that you need to do to make Agile successful, your daily stand-ups, having them, attending those, making sure that you have the discipline. What we do is we meet every week, every day, 15 minutes, and you all know about a stand-up. The second week of the sprint, we do a daily demo after the stand-up. So then I can see what's going on, okay? You've got to keep your backlog groomed, your sprint planning, your efforts being estimated once you get your stories created. And then to make these metrics work, you have to know how you're going to measure success, which is your acceptance criteria, being that these stories, how is the business going to accept this work? And then carrying on your sprint retrospective and your sprint review. If you get a solid Scrum cadence planned for these 2 weeks that you're doing it, you are 80 to 90% there in being successful with Agile. So some of the things that I measure real quickly are the work planned versus the work completed. And so how many stories did we plan to take on in the sprint and how many did we complete? I measure those by did they meet the acceptance criteria. Secondly is effort plan versus effort delivered. If you missed one of the above, you missed your effort. And so I will it'll be less effort. And then I'll average the effort over the past year or 2 years to see what our estimate of our team velocity is. Acceptance criteria, I mentioned that. That's everything that the story should achieve. That's how I know whether the story was delivered or not. You want to continue on to a continuous integration environment where you're constantly deploying this. So how do you know you're not breaking features? You need to have a resource that does your test automation, and then everything is balanced against the definition of done. We have a couple other metrics that I will discuss so that you can know it's working and maintainable and, is a good ultimate product. So, Frank, are there any other questions?
Not really a question. Charles said that some of the items that you were talking about sounds like change management.
Well, I think organizational change management is a really good piece of having your project. And I do large scale projects, so I constantly have to look around how it's going to impact the users. And so I do a lot of traditional things to support that. I still write a communication plan. I still do a stakeholder analysis and then, every week I do a demo with my business to show them, the completed items. So my role is project manager, so it's very traditional, but in the Scrum sense, I'm a proxy product owner because the business doesn't want to get involved on a day-to-day basis. And that's part about that hybrid, trying to make a hybrid model work.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to this once we've heard from Kevin to talk a little bit more about change management in the agile and in the traditional environment. In traditional types of projects, what we'll call conventional, we have a very, very specific process by which changes are introduced, analyzed, approved, or rejected, and so on. But in the agile environment, change is much more welcome and allows a little bit more of a fluid type of environment, but change has to stop at some point in time. So I'm going to come back to that a little bit later on as we close out, and I'm sure some other people might have some questions or some comments about managing change in these two environments. So, but before we let you go, is there any final comments or suggestions or resources you'd like to provide to the people listening?
Frank, I did post the link to the Standish Chaos Report. I'm not sure if everyone can see that in the chat folder.
Okay, if it's in the chat folder, it will be there, and I'll make sure that everybody gets to see it. Okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Kathy and Desiree. Again, I'm encouraging people to send in questions and try to make this somewhat interactive. If you have any comments or anything like that, now's the time to offer up those comments and questions. So far, I don't see any more right at this moment, but yeah, let me go back on that change management, and we will address that a little bit later on. So again, thank you, Kathy and Desiree, and I'm going to now ask for Kevin Martin to step into the picture for a minute. And what we're going to do here is Kevin, I know Kevin for a very long time. He's a past president of the PMI Alamo chapter down in San Antonio. And he is, I know, an agilist, an agile expert, and so on. And Kevin, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more from your perspective.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks so much for having me back again today. And howdy, everybody from sunny San Antonio, where we are home of the NCAA Final Four this week. So we've got a big project running here. Yeah, the city's about to fill up with a lot of tourists and leave a lot of their money. I heard today it was something close like $500 million this week. Just from this one event. So that's a major project that started about 4 years ago. So let me introduce myself and we'll get with it. I've got about 17 minutes to give us time for Q&A, and I think I can impart some things that will pique your interest and maybe cause you to think more. And my intent is to get you to think about being a leader and what that means, and maybe join us on the cruise to hear more of the details on. Desiree and Kathy, thank you so much. I can't agree with most everything you said. I read the Standish report. I read the version 1 report. We're still learning how to do agile, and it's all of us need to keep our minds open about new ways to do things and try to understand where there is common ground. Both disciplines are leadership disciplines. So I do have an MBA. That's my business background. I got my PMP. You can see there way back. I'm 63, 483. I know there's many more before me, but that was 1994. And now, gosh, I don't know where the number is. There's too many to count. And then in 2011, I got my ACP. I was one of the first 500 to sit for that test when there was nothing to study except 11 books, 3,888 pages, and $700 investment. I got my ACP and tried to be certified and then teach more people. As Frank said, I've been the president several times, and I just announced that I'm going to run again for our elections that are coming up. My wife said, "You're going to do what?" But she's still married. 38 years, we're still married, so she understands how I'm wired. But I do have something. Here's something. Everybody likes to get something for free. So one of the things under my name there says CMM. I'm not going to tell you what that is, but if somebody can tell me what CMM is and why it matters for this, I'll send you a free book of some type, my choosing. It'll be a leadership book of some type, and I promise it'll be worthwhile. I am an international speaker because I go on the cruise. That's international waters, and that makes me an international speaker. Uh, and facilitator. I also speak for UTSA. I'm a professor out there, and I teach project management. I teach the only Agile course, which I took to that campus a year ago. And I'm also in their Center for Professional Excellence, which means I fly around the country to big corporations that pay UTSA to train their executives. And I think the thing that matters most for this conversation is I'm a member of 5 board of directors. And what I'm going to talk about today is something that I've been tracking for about 3 years, which is HR, issues with HR because of Agile adoption. So my Agile journey started in 2002 when I brought a concept called XP, stands for Extreme Programming, to the PMI Congress here in San Antonio. And I was on the advanced track. I had just come off being the president, and I built the XP was a concept that was growing. It wasn't even called Agile in 2002. The second thing I did was I brought a guy I found who lives in Comfort, Texas. Wouldn't everybody want to live in Comfort, Texas? Sounds like a great place. By the way, it's right next to Welfare, Texas, so be careful. You might wind up in welfare. But Christopher Avery is a friend of mine, and he has a book called The Responsibility Process, and I highly recommend it to you. I highly recommend his program. Connect with him, and he's a super leader. But Agile is about a mind shift, and Christopher helps you with that mind shift.
Hey, Kevin, Frank here.
Yeah.
Just you had asked the question about what CMM is, and Kathy Rogers said certificate in meeting management.
I love it.
And Letitia said capability maturity model, CMM.
No, that is not. The Capability Maturity Model Institute, CMMI, from Carnegie Mellon. That's Carnegie Mellon's institute. It is not CMM. But thanks for playing. Keep going, everybody. The gifts are still out there. I read about 25 to 38 books every year since 1994 when I got my MBA, and it caused me to read, and I do that every year. And so if you'd like to see my reading list, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll send you that as well. But Agile is a tough deal. Agile is the easiest thing to understand. Scrum's the most implemented. It's 3 roles and 5 ceremonies, and it's the hardest thing you'll ever try to do because practicing it is difficult. We've been on a successful run since about 2010, and so I think we've found some secrets, but we had 2 runs where we failed and learned things, and I can talk to you about that on the cruise. It's not the focus. But what I'd like to talk to you, Frank, let's see, anything else here? Yeah, my fun fact is Kmart. If you see me live, call me Kmart. I know we've met before. If you call me Mr. Martin or Kevin, I know we've never met. And my quote is, and I use this for everybody, I want you to dream big, and I mean dream big so that it makes other people laugh out loud. I want you to work hard at whatever you choose to do, and then I want you to find ways to give back, like this webinar. Give back what you know so that other people can take what you learn and improve on it. So at the bottom, you see some of my clients, UTSA, Texas A&M, Cisco Systems, USAA, some PMI chapters, a regional meeting, and some other institutes, which are interesting. In the internal auditors of San Antonio and the International Supply, the Institute for Supply Management. So all of these folks are figuring out that these agile disciplines and these project management disciplines are not just for software. They're not just for major companies. Everybody can do better if they understand some of these disciplines, and that's really been my message. So here's my talk that I want to get to, which is HR is seriously broken. No, I mean seriously broken. On the left is a Harvard Business Review. It's one of the things that I take back in 2016, which is where that's from. I believe that was from a July article when it was monthly. It says it's time to blow up HR and build something new, and here's how. Good article, had some things, people tried it. And then in the middle, 2017, a Deloitte survey said 79% of global executives rated agile performance as a high priority. I want you to just stop there for a second and say, what do you guys think about that survey, and are you experiencing something similar? So maybe on a scale of 1 to 5, how important do you think that that quote from a Deloitte survey is based on your experience?
Kevin, while they're answering that question, I have a question for you. Do executives really know what agile is? My
No.
experience is that they, and I'm going to use a profound statement, I guess, but they're clueless. I really don't think they understand it, and I think
Yeah,
that they are creating internal problems because of their failure to understand what agile is.
I agree 100%. And it's because oftentimes they're told that it's simple. It's 5 ceremonies and 3 roles, and that sounds super easy. And they start down that journey. And being from Texas, I always have Texan analogies, right? So I always tell them, be careful what you ask for, because there's cows that come with that agile barn that you don't understand. And I'm going to talk about that, and HR is one of them. So you're 100% on, Frank. They don't understand how the culture will be changed by Agile. They don't understand how the processes will be changed. And I'm going to talk about that in respect to HR, just one of the areas, but it impacts everybody.
Okay, a couple of items that just came up here. One is from Chris Lowe, who said, it's important to keep your product owner engaged and prioritizing, in parentheses, and de-scoping product backlog items. Once
100%.
the backlog loses its fluidity and a trend in your velocity is established, you can more accurately project your schedule. And then James Hayner, I believe that's how it's pronounced, said, is CMM certified medical manager or certified maintenance manager? And, and Letitia said certified medical manager also. So they're really guessing about what this is.
Yeah, but somebody wants a book. Let's keep playing. No
okay,
winner
so
yet.
Anyway, you can continue on with your HR is broken.
Yeah, so the Harvard Business Review on the right is now a quarterly presentation, and they're usually double-sized, so they just come once a quarter. But if you probably can't see it on the slide deck, but at the top it says HR Goes Agile, and that's from this quarter. That came out in February, and so you can see that Harvard Business Review, Wall Street Journal, everything that I read, they're all trying to crack this nut on what is the deal with HR and why is it not performing in agile companies. And so I continue to read. So if you'll go to the next slide. So why now and why me? Everybody's like, why are you making this work so difficult? Well, we're not. And here's what I know. The gap between strategy and execution excellence, which is also hot topics right now on anything that you go to. When you can marry strategy to execution successfully, you have high-performing teams with unbelievable achievement, whether it be business value or team performance or whatever the measure is. However, between strategy and execution excellence, there's a chasm. And in that chasm are 2 things that I'm tracking. One is your HR policies, programs, procedures, and the culture they're helping build, whether it be diversity or whatever it might be. They are shaping the culture of your company. HR is, partially. The second group that's doing that is the culture, just the culture from the leaders at the top. Those 2 people are influencing the chasm between what you want to get done, which is strategy, and what you actually get done, which is execution. And HR is in the middle, and execution has to do with the discipline, whether you use project management or whether you use agile or hybrids. By the way, when I took my certification in 2011, there were only 16 frameworks under the agile big umbrella. So when people say, are you agile? And everybody goes, yes, that's kind of like saying, are you a human? Yes. Okay. They don't tell you where they live. They don't tell you what food they eat. They don't tell you anything. When you say, are you agile? That is almost useless information. There are now 71, and this is my personal count, there are over 71 frameworks under the Agile umbrella because they continue to morph, and as someone said earlier, they are looking to work inside of the organization that they're being executed in, and they find things that work. And because Agile has this concept of feedback loops and adaptation quickly, they're hybridizing almost everything. So there's lean, there's Scrum, lean. The one that's real popular right now is called Scaled Agile Framework from Dean Leffingwell. Dean is got something I think is really important. So if you're not a SAFE person, you might want to look at SAFE, Scaled Agile Framework. Really good slide deck there. It's called, go to Google and type in SAFE, S-A-F, and a little E. Everything else is capitalized, in 8 slides. It's a really nice slide deck for those that want to understand what SAFe is. And it's really scaling Agile for large corporations. So that's what the slide is on the left. And the reason I chose the Pirates of the Caribbean is because you have to find ways to get your enemies, which were some at one point heresy to talk about Agile inside of the project management group. But you guys know that the PMBOK just changed and the test just changed, and Agile is here to stay. It's not going to go away whether you like it or not. So I'm encouraging you to start to learn and internalize it. And don't assume because you think Agile is doing something. Ask someone, what does that mean? What is a minimal viable product? What does that look like? What does it mean to take changes all the time? Does that mean you never know when you're going to be finished? Absolutely not. So don't assume that you know what Agile is. Be curious and ask questions, but don't jump to conclusions. You can do that in the exercise program that you have at the gym. The next on the right-hand side there is a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. Every year in August, I do a leadership talk that's broadcast from Chicago, and Chris McChesney, and his quote from that book, and it's an excellent book, by the way, 4 Disciplines of Execution. The hardest thing a leader will ever do is to drive a strategy or plan that changes human behavior. And if you've been involved in projects, that's what we do every day. We change either products or behavior or strategy, and we are change agents. And I think someone mentioned earlier, what about change? I'm also doing a second talk on this cruise Friday morning, and it's called Courageous Leadership. And I marry some concepts, and change management is one of them, and it's an excellent book. So if we have another webinar, I might talk about that. But let me move on. So why now? Why me? Because if you don't, your competition will kill you. You will die. Your company will go away if you don't get in front of this as a leader. Okay, close me out, Frank. One more slide. 3 minutes, and I'm right on target. All right, so here's some HR policies that are just pretty much standard, and I guess we can debate them, but basically HR has responsibility for a recruitment process, some team building, compensation, coaching, promotions, continuous learning, whether it's in your training and development department or under HR, and then retention of employees. And retention is really difficult. It costs a lot of money to lose people, especially good people who are trained. And so HR, when they do their job well, does all of those in balance, and they recruit for the right reasons. But let me tell you what we're doing wrong, and then I'll talk about the 2 books that are on the screen. In the old skills for recruitment, we recruit people for technical things that they could do, knowledge of whether it be a coding language or tools or techniques. And so I see these requirements come through, and they're hiring for a project manager, and they're hiring for, can you do, do you know the PMBOK? Okay, but when we get them in the door and we say, okay, now you're going to do Agile, we didn't even ask them about that. We didn't even tell them they were going to use Agile. And what we should be hiring for, in my opinion, is more behavior-based. Things like, how well do you work in teams, collaboration? What have you read lately? How do you continuously learn? What challenges you? What problems are you solving in your own career and in your workplace? And I think the last one, which is really hot, and I have a great example for it, is innovation. Because we should be hiring for people who think and solve innovative problems. One of the things, the story that I'll share with you quickly is we have an innovation program where I work, and it might surprise you that a couple of years ago, the #1 person with filed patents with the United States Patent Office, he had 69 in 1 year, was a security guard that guards our gates and checks our badges when we come through the gate. And I find that amazing, that a person who has that kind of skills and training has the ability to sit there and go, why don't we do this? Or why couldn't we do this? And he asks questions and he files it, and it becomes an idea that somebody else actually implements, and he gets the not only financial reward, but the initiation of an innovation. I think that's fabulous, and that's what we should all be doing. And we should be hiring for people like that. All right, the 2 books that I have in front of you is Holacracy. If you're familiar with Zappos is a shoe company, interesting story. But Holacracy, in a sentence, is flattening the organization. It says the subtitle is A New Management System for a Rapidly Changing World. That's what got me, was the subtitle. Holacracy, okay, that's fine, I don't care. But A New Management System for a Rapidly Changing World, I said, ooh, I have got to read this, because speed is going up. It's changing so fast that I can't stay in front of the problems. And then I found this Agile People book, and I actually shared it with another speaker, Kim Buxton, who was working on business agility, and that's what she's going to talk about, and I hope she gets a chance on a future webinar. But I found this book by Pia Maria Thorin, and I love the name anyway, and super book, and it's going to be the focus of my talk. So I'll spend an hour, I don't know if it's an hour and a half, I'm still working on the program, on the time slots for everybody, but we will talk about some things that Pia has found that I found absolutely fascinating and want to share with you on the cruise. And so last slide, and we're right on time because my timer just went off. So in closing, I just want to encourage you to join me on the cruise or connect with me on LinkedIn, because you're in a leadership role. If you're in a project management or an agile leader, you have a plan, you have a team, you're going to make decisions that will impact you for the rest of your project and maybe the rest of your career. And it's all about bringing business value, and leadership is right down the middle of that. And I want to give you everything I've learned, can learn, and will continue to learn about leadership. And with that, I'll give it back to you, Frank, and ask, do we have any more guesses on CMM?
Yeah, we do, and people are really getting creative here, I have to tell you.
All righty.
Chuck says, well, actually, I'm going to start with Jeff, who said certified marina manager.
No.
Okay. Chuck said change management master.
No.
James said certified mineral manager.
Winner.
No.
Certified mineral manager. That is correct.
Certified mineral manager?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Wow.
It's for oil and gas. I live in Texas, man. We have oil wells and tumbleweeds and snakes and horses, okay? But I actually do manage the oil wells, and I went and got certified mineral manager, and that was a few years ago. So good guess. Capture that name for me, and let me know how I can get in touch with them, and I'll send them a book.
Okay, James, Haner. And James, send an email to Kevin, and we'll make sure that you get Kevin's email.
Yeah, just connect me on LinkedIn.
Second.
That's probably the fastest way. LinkedIn.
Okay. A couple more, though. I thought this was kind of interesting. Charles said Canadian measurement metrology.
I love the creativity. That's innovative.
Kim says conflict management and mitigation. And then Letitia said, I should have known that. I'm also in O&G.
Oil and gas.
James says he worked for PetroSkills. So I didn't know that, Kevin. So, that's a new one for me. CMM, huh? I thought it was capability management. Well, that's actually 3.
Well, that's why I put it in there. I thought it would be interesting. Okay. And again, I use everything that I learned here. I manage my minerals and our family estate the same way.
Here's a question for you, though. The question is, how do we get HR to change?
So I'm on that path right now. I wish I could give you the silver bullets, and here's 5 things to do. One is conversations. Go to them like I did and say, to legal, HR, marketing, all your support organizations that are relatively small and built during the industrial age when there were policies that were built over time, primarily legally based. I mean, HR, everything is pretty much to keep you out of the court system. And go to them and say, you've got to change the way we do things, and start having those conversations. I'll share more on the cruise, but I will tell you it's not easy conversations, and everybody thinks Agile is going to go away, and I'm going to tell you it's not.
Yeah, I don't think Agile is going to go away, but there are some concerns out there. I thought when I read and started to study Agile with the Agile manifesto, I think it was, and then the 12 principles of Agile, it all seemed to make pretty good sense in the IT software environment. And there were people attempting to find ways to cross over into what we'll call more traditional, conventional type projects. But you mentioned 71 frameworks inside Agile. It continues to morph. We've now got something called Scaled Agile Framework. We've got something called SAF, small e, SAFE. You also mentioned pirates. that Agile is considered heresy, and just a whole number of other things that, to me, continue to feed this controversy that exists between. And I'm offering up a question to yourself, Desiree, and Kathy. What are we going to do about this? And is there a good news story in all of this? I'm going to ask Desiree if you would maybe address that. What do you think?
Sorry, Frank, can you repeat the question?
Well, we were just looking at, Kevin mentioned 71 frameworks inside Agile. Agile continues to morph. I mentioned this new scaled Agile framework called SAFE. Kevin mentioned that we're pirates and there's heresy, and there's a lot of confusion out there. What are we going to do to get the traditionalists and the agilists to actually start talking to each other in a way that's going to be more collaborative?
I think it also goes back to the culture of the organization too. I think that's dependent. What's the appetite for the organization to determine which one, and do you create that hybrid that's the best of both? Because I know in the organization I work in, there's a real push from the IT side to move towards Agile, but then there's resistance within the IT to take on and learn a whole new approach when you're mandated to get your projects delivered on time, on schedule, under the waterfall approach. So it is creating multiple models. I think you're probably finding a whole bunch of custom models, and probably 71 may double or triple over the years as we eventually find where that happy medium is across the board, where we can create a standardization across nationally and worldwide.
Hey, Kathy, I'm going to ask you the same question. Yeah.
Okay, good. I think we have to live with being schizophrenic. Because we have multiple personalities in this role. Where I'm at, I have an SDLC that uses waterfall milestones, but yet I'm responsible for managing in an agile fashion. So I think that, I'm constantly got two personalities going on, and just trying to find something that works in your organization, and setting realistic expectations for yourself and your team, and then working with your business to negotiate realistic expectations around what they can expect. It's never going to be perfect, and in my experience, traditional project management wasn't perfect either. I used to define a project, as a series of problems, and it's how you handle it is the difference between success and failure, and that still is my motto today, whether it's agile or traditional.
Okay, Kevin, I'm going to just switch the question a little bit here. What was mentioned earlier was defining acceptance criteria and also setting expectations, and Kathy had mentioned that also. My understanding, and at least my perspective, is that most organizations that I have worked with, and I'm going to say the majority, they're not very good at actually setting acceptance criteria, and they're even worse at setting expectations. Now, I think that those two things have to be addressed as part of this way in which we can collaborate and bring traditional and agile type of projects together. What's your thought on that?
I agree completely. There's a couple of things underlying agile adoption that have to happen before agile can actually get speed. So I call it the fuel. One of them is a concept called being held accountable. Everybody's held accountable no matter what their role is, and you can't hide out in agile. So if business people can't envision or communicate what they think they want to do, then I don't care what framework or what kind of team you have, they won't perform very well. So driving ambiguity about what that vision looks like, there are methods to do that. We have a charter, and we have other documents inside of project management that do that, and agile has similar things. They're different controls, but they're all about driving out ambiguity. The second thing is you have to collaborate And part of collaboration is you have to trust people. And I think that some of the baggage in my experience with agile handicaps is rooted in lack of trust that's baggage brought forward. It has nothing to do with the agile adoption, but agile's often said, oh, it's not working. And if I go in as a coach and look at it, I find that there's a root of lack of trust. And I'll give you the example on how we broke it at one company. We said we want to do an agile adoption, and they said we can't take the risk. And I said, I'll take all the risk. Give me X amount of dollars, give me 12 weeks, and let me show you what a team, if you take all of the controls, the old controls off of me, okay, let me run agile as pure as I can, reporting to no one, and let me show you what it can do. I'll finish that. 12 weeks later, we spent $4 million. And you know what first thing they said? What if we gave you another 12? What could you do with that $12 million? I think we won. And that's how we started. So find a way to do a skunk work and push it aside and learn how to do agile without all the other baggage.
Okay, we're going to start to close out here, but a comment just came in from, I'm probably not going to pronounce the name correctly, Wakar Khan said, none is as smart as all of us. And he put capital
100%.
letters team. So I think we do have to get everybody to talk to each other and not take sides. I just I see this still going on for some time, Kevin. You and I have experienced it in person.
Yes, sir.
And unfortunately, it gets emotional. And people take exception to each other when, hey, this is the project management community. It's worldwide. And, you know, we are taught in project management classes and leadership classes, conflict, how to deal with conflict, how to collaborate, how to cooperate, how to communicate. And yet I don't see a lot of people practicing that. So I think we really have to, step up to that and use the term accountability. You know, we are project managers and we are accountable, and people have certain very, very specific expectations of us. Let's clarify those expectations. Let's open up the minds to different ways in which we can get work done. Put together something that will be beneficial from both sides. There's got to be things that Agile does that traditional project managers should be doing, and vice versa. And I think that we should be all focused on what we'll call continuous improvement and enhancement instead of my way is best. And I think that if we can start to do that, we'll actually really make some real major progress.
100%, Frank. You're right on.
Okay, let's see. Desiree said something here. My motto is, if it is to be, it is up to me, by William H. Johnson. Okay, so anyway, I think that we're at the close of the session here. I hope you enjoyed the session. I thought it was kind of lively, and I get the feeling it was more like a radio program than it was a webinar, and I like the interactive nature of it and the questions that were asked. We will get, I think, James, we have to get you that book. And again, like I said, focus on getting Kevin your email. AJ just said something. He sent me a note there. AJ Collier, who organized Seminars at Sea, is encouraging everybody to take another look at it. Maybe you have some time to spend with us on the cruise. It's actually a very, very enjoyable cruise and educational environment. I like to call it an edu vacation. And it isn't all fun and games, but we definitely will have some fun. And the other thing that was brought up was innovation. So I'm going to leave you with one little tip here. I found a book it's been around for a couple of years now. But if you are looking for ways to get your team to be more creative, to generate new ideas, and to be more collaborative, it's a book called What a Great Idea 2.0. What a Great Idea 2.0. And the author is Chick Thompson. That's C-H-I-C Thompson. And I think you'll find some real useful information. And James says, way to go, a delightful experience. Letitia says, excellent moderating. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Chuck Kennan says, hey, what's going on with my PDUs? And he wants some cruise information. So that's what I better do, is get the PDU information up there so that you can apply that. It is a self-awarded PDU. We don't have a mechanism for automatic applying of PDUs, but this is under the technical part of the talent triangle, and all the information is right there in front of you. If you have any additional questions, then you can send an email to myself, to Kevin, to AJ Collier. We'll post all the information. If you have any questions about the cruise, again, you're going to find it lots and lots of fun and highly educational. We have lots of professionals that are on there. We have evening sessions after dinner where we keep engaged, with the folks that are attending the seminars, and we also have people that bring their families, and we come together on Sunday late afternoon, early evening for a final reception, which is also quite a bit of fun. We call it Club PMI. So if anybody's interested, make sure you get in touch with AJ. We'll get the information to you. In the very beginning, I showed you a slide. I'm going to go to that so you can, if you're interested in contacting someone about the cruise, then you can go to Sherry at HoustonTravelZone.com, and she could provide you with all the experience. And as a follow-up, we'll make sure that you get all the emails that you need to ask any questions. One other thing as we close out, Kevin, Desiree, and Kathy, there were several requests for your LinkedIn account information. People want to connect with you. I think that they have more questions for you and really want to learn more about your perspectives on Agile and where you can get some more resources to help them understand it. So make sure that you post that up there before we close out. You can put that in the chat box and send it to the entire audience. And I'll leave this up for just a couple of minutes more as we close out, but I'm going to go right back to the PDU slide just in case somebody may have missed it.
Yeah,
Hey,
and Frank, can I add something real quick? Just want to make sure everybody knows about, we have a visionary sponsor for the cruise this year, and our captains. Our visionary sponsor is the Project Management Leadership Group, Bill Stewart. Unfortunately, Bill was going to be on the cruise as a speaker and then got pulled away because his business is doing so well. And he's actually in Hong Kong today. If you need training in project management, please look to PMLG. And he is working on a book, I know, for strategic execution, and I can't wait till it comes out. And then our next level is Blue Marble. That's Frank, and then Successful Projects, which I think is Dennis.
No, actually, Successful Projects is the organization that provides the platform for the webinar.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, and we are looking for sponsors. So if anybody is interested, we have multiple levels of sponsors, and Kevin would be the person to talk to about that. Okay, and here's that PDU information one more time. And AJ is sending me some information, but I can't see it quick enough to get it to you right now. So we'll make sure that you get that information in case you have questions. Can you put the speaker page up for a minute? Sure. Let me go right there. That's Letitia is asking for that. So let me go right to the speaker page.
Yeah, and I encourage everybody to treat yourself. Let me just say the cruise is the best 4 days that you'll invest in not only your learning, but also in a relaxation. I've taken my family several times, and it's a very relaxing week, 4 days actually. So if you're above anything outside of Texas and it's cold, I want you to know that Cozumel averages around 88 degrees, and the water temperatures really nice when we go on the cruise. So come on, get wet.
Okay, one more thing. Some of you might be interested in actually speaking on these webinars. I run these webinars fairly often from PMI New York City chapter for seminars at sea for successful projects. If you are a speaker, you're interested in providing a subject, send me a note, and you get to send my email is my last name, Saladis. That's SALADIS pmp@msn.com. If you're interested in speaking and getting information about what you know about project management to the worldwide PMI or project management community, let me know and we'll try to set you up for one. Okay, and with that, I think that we'll close. Thank you very much to our speakers, Desiree, Kathy, and Kevin, for joining us. I think that you have provided some really useful information, and I think that you've also provided some more fuel for discussion between the Agilist and the Traditionalist. And that discussion will probably go on for some time. I will send you... I'm going to post my email so that everybody sees what that is. Okay, and I thank you again, speakers. I know everybody's busy, so I appreciate it. Oh, by the way, one more last thing is that we're going to have another webinar probably in about another week and a half. More speakers from Seminars at Sea will be on. You'll see that information posted pretty much the same way we did it before, plus it'll be up on LinkedIn. Okay, so thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.